Then a Sports Central, we go over a college football game preview and prediction on a big matchup coming up here in the Big Ten in Week 11 of this 2022 college football season. In this game over the Maryland Terrapins and the Penn State Nittany Lions. Huge matchup for both these teams coming up here in Week 11. You got Maryland, who is 6-3 on the season. This team is bowl eligible heading into this matchup, and they're potentially one of the dark horse teams in the Big Ten as they take on Penn State, who is 7-2 on the season. This team is ranked 14th in the second edition of college football playoff rankings, and they're definitely still one of the top teams in the Big Ten. So an intriguing matchup coming up here in Week 11. We'll be going over a full game preview and prediction on this matchup here today. Starting out with your team trends, Maryland lost to Wisconsin 10-23 in their Week 10 matchup, so a disappointing loss for Maryland there, but this team has still had a good season to this point, being 6-3 and bowl eligible. I mean, they were bowl eligible heading into November, yet the Terrapins really haven't been ranked this season. So you could say that Maryland is maybe one of the sneaky good teams in the Big Ten. I mean, they're obviously not a major contender in the conference, but this is still a team that can put up a fight against some good opponents, and Penn State is definitely one of them in this situation. The Nittany Lions beat Indiana 45-14 last week, so a dominant win for Penn State in that one, and they're 7-2 on the season. Of course, their two losses on the season come to Ohio State and Michigan, so obviously for Penn State, their chances of winning the Big Ten East are now pretty much gone, but it's still been a great season for Penn State, and this team at 7-2, they're still very much able to potentially make it to a pretty high-grade bowl game once we get to the postseason. Games be on Saturday, November 12th in University Park, Pennsylvania. So Nittany Lions are the home team for this one. Kickoff is 3:30 p.m. Eastern time, so Penn State in an afternoon game does have the home field advantage. Spread's going with Penn State here by 10, and the over-under is 59. FPI is going as well with Penn State, 78.1%. So Penn State is favored in this matchup by about a touchdown and a field goal, which is, I mean, it makes sense. You got Penn State, who, being at home, they've overall had a stronger season than Maryland, even though the Terps are, once again, not far behind. I feel like Maryland is a team that is very much able to put up a fight in this matchup. Series history, Penn State leads it 41-3. Penn State has won 41 out of 44 against Maryland in their series history, which is something that really surprised me when I first saw that. I mean, Maryland has won twice, and I mean, these two teams played quite a bit way back before the 2000s, and of course, we eventually saw Maryland and Penn State get reunited in the same conference when Maryland joined the Big Ten just a few years ago. I think it was like 2014, 2013, something like that. So, I mean, since then, we've seen Maryland and Penn State play each other quite a bit, and I mean, Maryland's won two matchups against Penn State since they joined the Big Ten back in, yes, it was 2014. But Penn State won the last matchup, and they've also won 4 out of the past 5 against the Terps. Stat comparison, Maryland is 36th in points per game, 43rd in points allowed. They're 41st in passers a game, 56th in rush yards, and then for yards allowed, 75th in passing, 49th in rushing. And then as for Penn State, they're 25th in points per game, 21st in points allowed, 35th in passers a game, 49th in rush yards, and then for yards allowed, 67th in passing, 32nd in rushing. So, I mean, Penn State is a pretty solid team in just about every area. I mean, they're in the top 40 in 4 of those categories. Maryland's main strength is, you could say, on the offensive side of the ball, even though both teams are fairly good on both the offensive and defensive sides. But Maryland, of course, I mean, it's been different for both these teams depending on the game. Maryland last week really struggled on offense to get anything going against Wisconsin. And, of course, the Badgers' defense is pretty good this season. It's just the offensive side that's been terrible for Wisconsin. And quite honestly, that's how it is with most teams in the Big Ten West. Just the offensive side of the ball is terrible. But, yeah, for Maryland, I mean, this team, they've shown potential on both sides of the ball. Same with Penn State, as they are in the top 25 in both points per game and points allowed. Recent matchups, Maryland lost to Wisconsin 10-23, beat Northwestern 31-24, beat Indiana on the road 30-33, had a brutal loss to Purdue 29-31, and beat Michigan State 27-13. So this team is 3-3 in conference, and I mean, they've gone up to 6 wins. They won all of their non-conference games, being over Buffalo, Charlotte, and SMU. So this team really doesn't have a big dominant win to this point. You could say the most impressive win to this point in the season was against Michigan State. But this is a huge opportunity for Maryland to really prove that they can be that excellent team. And with a 6-3 record, Maryland is obviously doing something right to be at this point of the season and having 6 wins. As for Penn State, they beat Indiana 45-14. They lost to Ohio State 31-44. Beat Minnesota 45-17. Lost to Michigan 17-41, and beat Northwestern 17-7. So obviously you got that blowout loss against Michigan. This team lost to Ohio State in a game that was pretty close for a long time. Penn State hung in there, but in the end they took a loss by 13 points. But, I mean, Penn State, for the most part, I mean, against opponents that they should beat, this team has performed pretty well. I mean, that Northwestern game had some weather effects, which kept it kind of low scoring. But, I mean, they dominated Minnesota, who I would consider to be one of the top teams in the Big Ten West. And they obviously just beat Indiana 45-14. Your key points: Maryland 6-3. This team is a talented team that has been a bit inconsistent. They're one of the dark horse teams in the Big Ten. And by dark horse, I don't mean that Maryland is a dark horse contender. I'm just saying I feel like this team is definitely a talented team that can really put up a fight against some good opponents. And, I mean, they've been a bit inconsistent. That's kind of been the issue. But at this team's best, I feel like Maryland could definitely compete right up next to Penn State. And so, I mean, yeah, once again, they're 6-3. This is a team that has won a decent amount of games this season. So, I mean, and you got Tagovailoa, their quarterback, who's had a good season to this point, lead rusher, and Hemby's already got nearly 800 yards. So this is a talented team here, and I feel like they're a team not to be underestimated. But defensively, this team's going to have a strong game, especially on offense. It's going to be tough for this team to score a whole lot of points. And they only scored 10 against Wisconsin last week. So it's going to be tough for Maryland to put up a lot of points against a strong Penn State defense. But, I mean, defensively, I feel like if Maryland can force some turnovers, they can keep this game close and potentially make a run for a huge upset win. I mean, we've seen Maryland compete with the best of them before. I mean, they played Michigan on the road back in late September and lost by only a touchdown. They were in that game until the very end. So, I mean, Maryland has hung in there, and this is a team that I think is very much capable of competing with the best of them. And as for Penn State, this team remains as one of the top teams in the Big Ten. Obviously, they're not going to win the East Division. They're not going to win the conference, but I would say Penn State has got an argument to potentially be the third best team in the conference. They're a strong team on both sides of the ball. Sean Clifford, veteran quarterback, he's got experience. This is a very experienced team, and they still have potential to make a run for a near 6, but this is an important game in building that resume and staying in the top 15 if they want to be in contention for a potential at-large bid. But that said, let's get to the prediction here for Maryland and Penn State coming up here in Week 11. I'm going to go with Penn State here, 34-24 is my predicted final score. Penn State in general has played pretty well at home this season. I mean, if you look at that Minnesota win, 45-17, kept it close against Ohio State. That's another thing, is Penn State is a really strong team at home. And so I think this game is a bit closer than some might expect. I think Maryland hangs in there and really makes this a competitive game. Yeah, but in the end, I feel like Penn State maybe pulls away in the fourth quarter. They score a touchdown, maybe get a good turnover off of the Terps, and in the end, Penn State wins this game by 10, 34-24. So I'll say 55% towards Penn State. I honestly consider bumping that up to 60 or 65. I am pretty comfortable saying that Penn State's going to win this one, but I do want to say this. I feel like some might say, oh, Penn State is no doubt going to win this game, but I do want to say Maryland does have a chance to really put up a fight, and I feel like they should not be underestimated. That's for sure, because if Penn State starts to underestimate Maryland in any way, I mean, the Terps could really take advantage of that, and I feel like they're very much capable of pulling off an upset here. But in the end, I'm going to go with Penn State 34-24. I'll take the under 59 and Penn State to cover the spread. The spread's currently going 10 points towards Penn State. So technically with this score prediction, I'd be predicting a push. But in this situation, if I'm going to take the spread on anybody, it'd probably be on Penn State in the case if they maybe got another field goal up on the board and won it by 13 or so. But that's it. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below on this matchup, and I appreciate you guys watching as always. Stay tuned for more from All Sports Central. Catch you on the next one.